Hey, welcome back. We are on, I believe, week 6 of our postage stamp quilt sew along. This is going to be our last video because I'm going to show you a couple of things right now, and then you are going to take this and run with it. You're going to keep adding panels until you get it to the size that you want it to be, whether it's just just one panel. That could be a table topper, it could be a placemat. There's a whole lot of different options. Make it into a pillow, whatever you want to do with it. Or you can keep adding it on and make a whole king size of this. I am not going to continue this because this was just to show y'all, but I do want to show you how to trim it, that kind of stuff, and give you a couple of tips on that. So once you have pressed all of this out, we talked about last week, you're going to press it. Make sure that you have your silicone sheets over, so this does not, because this still has glue on it, you don't want it to get on your iron like I did a couple of weeks ago if you were watching. So I want to give you a tip or two on how to trim these up. So instead of, and I do the same concept on when I'm trimming quilts, because not everything is always super straight, super even, especially after it's gone through the quilter. That kind of adjusts things a little bit. But even though these are fairly straight, you can kind of look at it and see, let me see it more on this one, where they're not all 100% even. So what I want to do is I want to measure from an inside seam. I don't want to just quilt, or I don't want to trim it right along this edge right here, because it may or may not be straight. And especially when you're trying to do quilts or something like that, and you want to trim it up, you want those outer borders to be even all the way around. You want the quilt to be square, all of those kinds of things. I measure from an inside seam. So like this seam here is where I'm going to measure from, not right along this edge. So I've already done this other side over here. You can see it's all nice and straight. I know it's a good straight seam. So when I get ready to do the next one right here, I'm going to make sure that I'm square and make sure that I'm straight. So to make sure that I'm square, I'm going to take this is where I'm going to cut. I want one of these lines right here that are perpendicular to where I'm going to cut. I want to line it up with this part right here that I've already cut. I want this to be lined up with right here. Okay. I know this is kind of hard to see, but I'm going to line it up across the bottom to make sure that I'm getting that good crisp 90-degree angle. And then depending on what size grid you used will determine on how far away from that inside seam that you're going to measure. So because I did the 2-inch grid, in theory, if I take away that 1/4 of an inch, I should have 1 3/4 left, because that 1/4 of an inch is where I sewed that seam. So now I'm going to have about 1 3/4 left. Depending on how accurate your seam allowance is, that may be a little bit too much, too little. You can adjust whatever is going to make that nice crisp line. I am going to line my ruler up with this seam here at 1 3/4. So I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to line this all up. You can pull a little bit. You don't want to pull too hard, especially on these edges, because this will tear. But you can kind of finagle this underneath the ruler to make sure that this is a good straight line under your ruler. So I am going to line this up the best I can. I want to make sure that I'm even with my edge on the bottom, and that, so now I'm going to pull this piece a little bit over. Gonna make sure up here at the top, gonna make sure that that is all nice and lined up, and then I'm just gonna trim the edge off. Okay, So now I've got this trimmed off of the edge. So now I've got a nice crisp 90-degree angle there. And you can see here, there's a couple places that maybe it didn't 100% catch here. That's okay, because I know that I measured from this inside seam and that this is consistent. This little bit of um, grid will not show up once I've sewn it to the next piece or put binding on it or whatever. So you're just going to trim this all the way around. Now, depending on how big you've made it, depending on what your preferences are, there's a lot of ways you can quilt this. You don't have to quilt it at all if you really don't want to. If I just wanted to take this and make a pillow, I could. I personally would still quilt it and then make a pillow. So you're going to sandwich it. You can pin baste it. You can spray baste it. Put it on your long arm if you have a bigger size. And then if you want to use the um, long arm to just stitch a meander or a specific pattern or however you want to do it, that's fine. Another really good way to do this on your regular machine, on your domestic machine, is to quilt it on the diagonal and just do a grid. Now, you do not have to quilt every single diagonal. Quilt every other one, every third, every whatever you want to do. So, depending on what batting you use, you need to check the manufacturer's recommendation on how far apart you quilt. A lot of them are like 4 inches. So, if I was quilting here on this diagonal, I don't want it to be more than 4 inches before I quilt on another one. So, I might do every other one or every third. Another option you can do is do every if you do an odd number, so if you do every third, every 5, if you decided that wasn't enough quilting, you could go back and do that middle. So if I did 1 and 5 and I decided I really want a little bit more quilting, I could go back and do 3. You can always add to it. So if you decide that you want to change it, you can. If you want to quilt it just one direction, you can. If you want to quilt it both directions on the diagonal, it's up to you. Another option might be, okay, up here, I'm going to quilt it on the diagonal going this way, and I'm going to go halfway down, okay? And then on this other side, I'm going to go this way so that up here, they're crossing. So we've got this side that's diagonal this way. And then here it's going to start and it's going to go down the other way. And then you can do it that way if you want to, so that in some places you've got it crossed, in some places it's just a single line. There's a ton of different options. Get creative with it. Do it however you want to do. Like I said, on a small project, you can use a spray based on, or you can pin it. You can throw it on your long arm. I wouldn't throw something this small on the long arm, but because it would take me longer to load it than it would actually quilt it. Now, if you were doing a whole bunch of these single panels and you were going to make pillows or something like that, I would load my backing and then put these on, baste them down with your machine like you normally would, and then quilt them all the same. I've done that with like placemat panels. I load it all in the machine as one piece, quilt the whole panel, and then I go back and cut the placemats apart and baste and bind them. Sorry. So that's totally up to you. But you see how straight these and how almost perfect these squares are. I didn't do anything special except follow the directions. Y'all literally saw every step of the process with me. So, but look how great these are. And if you wanted to do one panel, set it aside, come back later when you've got more scraps cut or something, and do the next panel, that's totally up to you. And it's however you choose to finish this out. Like I said, make a small quilt, make a large quilt, make a pillow, placemats, table toppers, whatever. If you have multiple panels and you want to sew them together, you're going to do just like you would any other project. So I would have this panel, and let's trim this other side up so I can kind of show you an idea. And we're going to pretend that these are two different panels here. So I would just line them up, make sure that my seams are locking in place here. Just again, just as you would any other project. So you are going to lock these together and then you're just going to stitch down here. And you've got your two panels sewn together. So you're just going to do that as many times for as many panels as you have made. But then this is going to come together so much faster than sewing one square to the next square to the next square to the next square. So, and again, there are a ton of different patterns and books or patterns and options that you can do with this. I have a friend that modifies almost every pattern she makes so she can do it on the grid. I've got a lot of different patterns that are I can send you. I've got seasonal patterns, things like that. I also do have two of their books from 10 Sisters in stock that give you larger project ideas. If you liked using this, then you may want to use it on a larger project and get more comfortable with it. And then you can start modifying your patterns to work with these. There's a high probability that I'm going to start writing some more patterns. I've got some that I had used with the grid before, but I need to finalize the patterns, and I will be releasing those um, to be available for purchase, or I don't know, maybe I'll give a few of them away or something like that. But just easy projects to use with this grid. And again, if you don't want to use the grid, you can completely take that pattern and use it and make the same projects, but without the grid. I just feel like the grid makes things so much quicker and faster and easier, and it's not a huge expense. To me, the little bit of money I spend on the actual grid and makes, the amount of time that I save and stress that I save and messing things up and everything else is totally worth it. These run, if you buy just one, they run about $6. The more you buy, the cheaper they are per panel. So if you just loved this time and you think you're going to want to use it more in the future, I would buy a larger pack. I would buy more panels at one time. And if you ever needed like 50 or 100 or something like that, let me know and I will get it to you as fast as I can. I do keep quite a bit on stock, but it comes 50 panels to a bolt. So, but the more y'all enjoy using it, the more I'll make sure that I have on hand. If you do want a very large quantity, just let me know ahead of time. Give me a little bit of a time frame so that I can get it in. They do ship very fast, and I really haven't had any issues with them and getting it quickly. If I emailed them right now, they would ship it out usually within about an hour. So I hope y'all have enjoyed doing this with me. Post in the comments your projects, how it's going when you're done. Send them to me. When you send them to me, let me know if I'm able to share them because your project and how you did it may inspire somebody else. So I hope y'all have had fun. It's been great. I am starting to gear up and get ready for our next sew along, so stay tuned for that. I will see you next time. Bye.